was basically a ploy. And we'll talk tonight about some of the details that we've learned about his proposal. Of course, yesterday Trump met with Netanyahu. They held a joint press conference, and Trump announced his intention to acquire the Gaza Strip, deport everybody from it, bulldoze it, clean it up, and then turn it into a world city, ostensibly as a U.S. territory. And the proposal was completely unexpected and fresh and different, and I like ideas like that. But of course, many people criticize this because it would most likely entail U.S. soldiers involved in a security role, what people call boots on the ground. It would involve the U.S. military deploying to the Middle East with a ground presence to probably carry out the deportations in itself, and then possibly a counterinsurgency like what we saw in Iraq or Afghanistan. And as people pointed out, it would be worse, actually, than Iraq and Afghanistan, because ostensibly, the counterinsurgency in Iraq and Afghanistan had a pretext of a U.S. interest being served. There was at least a front that we were carrying out those conflicts for the benefit of American citizens. If we were to do the same thing in Gaza, there would be no pretext at all. It would be plain and simple the United States deploying for the sake of Israel's security. And we did that before, but again, this time there's not even an excuse. So there was widespread criticism of the plan from me, from the American right, from the international community, from the Arab countries neighboring Israel and Gaza. Despite what Trump said in the press conference, Saudi Arabia is sticking to their demands for Palestinian statehood before they move forward with diplomacy with Israel on the Abraham Accords or a number of other things. Jordan and Egypt reaffirmed that they are unwilling to receive refugees from Gaza. And even the Trump administration itself is walking back the proposal. The press office, the State Department, the envoy to the Middle East are all saying that there will be no boots on the ground and actually no American money will be spent. And they're walking back other parts of it. And we've also learned that the proposal was not disclosed in advance to any of Trump's senior defense or diplomatic officials, nor even to the Israelis. And I had a hunch yesterday, and if you watched my show from last night, I said I actually don't think that it's going to play out exactly as Trump said. I think the end goal is to remove the Palestinians. I think that is one aspect of this that is inevitable at this point. But whether it is under the control of the United States or an international trust, which is what is written in Netanyahu's Gaza 2035 plan, or whether it is a consortium of Arab countries, it's really not relevant. The point is they're moving towards ending Gaza as a political entity, or at least as an Arab-Palestinian political entity. Most likely it will be folded into Israel, whether formally or unofficially. I think that's the end goal. And so tonight I want to talk a little bit about those details about Trump's proposal and the administration's reaction to the international and domestic reaction, and what I think the real purpose of it is. And I think that this is a very important principle, and we'll talk about it tonight. When you listen to Trump on foreign policy, you can never take anything he says at face value. And I've said this repeatedly throughout the year and over the many years I've been doing this show. Whether it was brinksmanship with North Korea or the tariff threats on Friday and Saturday, the diplomacy surrounding Canada and Greenland, you can't always take it to heart precisely the words he's saying, because most of the time, at least in the early stages, what Trump says is supposed to set a frame for a negotiation. And that's why typically it's bold and shocking and outrageous and sounds unrealistic, because it is a starting point in a negotiation. And that means a few things. It means that, one, as a starting point, it is intended to frame the negotiation between 2 or 3 or more parties. So it's like when you make an offer, you might lowball somebody. Whatever your first proposal is, that sets the tone for the counter proposal and then your response to that. On top of that, it also has a psychological effect. And I think that Trump's proposals or actions, which are usually unpredictable or surprising or aggressive, they all have the same pattern, which is they are intended to knock somebody off of balance. It's supposed to, whether they're allies or adversaries, it is supposed to interrupt their thinking on the negotiation. And I think that those are the two major characteristics whenever Trump approaches foreign policy. Again, in those initial stages in the beginning, it always is characterized by those two attributes. So we'll talk all about that. We're also going to talk tonight about this new executive order banning transgenders from girls' sports. Hooray. It's actually good. I like it. It's not, I don't really care that much about sports for little girls. It's sort of funny that that became the flashpoint. But like we talked about on the show before, that was just one of the most obvious ways. If we believe that people can change genders, then there are going to be these conflicts with how society used to work and how it's supposed to work now, that we've abolished the concept of gender. And so it's bathrooms, it's children's sports, it's anything where there is gender segregation. And the flashpoints are the ones where it's extremely obvious where ideology conflicts with biology. If you want to call somebody a different pronoun, well, language is already constructed in some ways. But if you're talking about children's sports, there's obvious physical differences and biological advantages and disadvantages. There's a reason why we segregate things based on gender. And so even though we don't really care that much about girls' sports, it's just one among another, or a series of issues where the transgender issue really comes to the front. And I have to say, I like seeing this only because you're starting to see a return to normalcy in the country. We're in this weird transition where it seems that wokeness, it's obviously receding. It's obviously going in a different direction. For years, it was advancing, getting more extreme, more demanding, more absurd. And it was expanding, moving forward. Now, it seems to have at the minimum stopped and is incrementally moving backwards. I don't know how far it will move backwards, but it is moving backwards. That much is indisputable, and I think that's a positive development. And the reason that it's refreshing is because when we imagine the society that we want to live in, when we try to remember why we're angry, why we're resentful and disillusioned with the society we live in, it's because maybe the most obvious reason, the most apparent reason, is because it's not normal. And this is one of the most abnormal things that we have to deal with. It's one of the strangest, most absurd, most abnormal, non-normative things that we have to see now and have to accommodate. But it's sort of interesting that it seems that this is the only way in which our society is becoming more normal. It seems that in every other way, things are becoming less normal, or the ways in which they're not normal have now become the norm. And I think specifically about race. And it seems like people have completely forgotten about race altogether. When I think about why I resist the changes that are happening in the country, first and foremost among them is that the country has become so much more racially diverse. And I've talked about it recently on the show. It is profoundly alienating on a deep level to be an alien in your own country in terms of your culture, physical appearance, everything about your heritage, everything about your ancestry. And it seems like that is something that is completely unaffected by this end of wokeness. And so I question how much wokeness is really on its way out. It seems that, like I said before, the most extreme, fringe types of wokeness are being curbed. But that doesn't mean that wokeness has ended. It actually means that wokeness succeeded. On the contrary. And I think that's an unpopular position. Everybody believes that we won, and wokeism is a figment of, I should say, something from the past. It's something that's been discarded. I don't believe that's the case. I think that wokeness achieved its objectives. I think that we are all more woke than we were 15 years ago. Everybody is, by a lot. And I think that now that those attitudes are universal, now the enforcement is becoming less aggressive. And there's a difference. The woke attitudes remain, but the over-the-top enforcement of those attitudes, the aggressive application of those attitudes, I think we're getting some breathing room. And maybe the most extreme, the excesses of wokeness are being curtailed. But make no mistake about it, in almost every way, shape, and form, I think we're all more woke than we were before all of this started. And I don't think that's changing. At least it's not changing under the current program. So anyway, we're going to talk about all that. Before we do, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble. Smash the like button, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the show. We had a pretty fun show yesterday with the Trump-Israel summit. We were waiting to see that for a very long time. And it's just another reminder about the political realities that we face. And I'll admit, I exaggerate things a little bit. But there is no exaggeration that the Israelis do control the government. And nobody talks about how, if you say that, you are still on the blacklist.
Copper is an essential component.
And this is something that I think it's important to say, and this is maybe the theme of the show tonight. But with Trump's victory in 2024, and with the way things are going, everybody believes that the empire has been destroyed, the worst is over, the good guys are winning, like we won, past tense, and now we are just glowing. Now it's just all on the up and up. And that is belied by the fact that people that are criticizing the power structure still remain censored and canceled. And I think about what Tucker Carlson said on the Piers Morgan interview this weekend. For as much as the conversation has changed for the better, for as much as people are waking up about the influence of Jews in Israel in the country, and people are able to speak freely about things like AIPAC or the Israel lobby or the Kennedy assassination or 9/11 or the war in Iraq and the neocons, as much as all of that is changing, it remains true that if you are outspoken and explicit and directly opposed to the entire structure of Israeli and Jewish influence in the country, you are under the most political pressure. Destructive, like the pressure that is equivalent to annihilation. And you saw that with Ye a couple years ago. You see that with me all the time. Anybody that is outright against the state of Israel, against the Jewish influence, anybody that is talking about it in a direct way is just crushed still. And the only thing that's changed is that people try to stay out of that situation, and people can gesture towards it and wink and nudge, and there's innuendo, and I think people are able to speak a little bit more freely, but the people are still avoiding that intensely. And case in point, what we saw yesterday. Everybody is out there criticizing it, but the people that actually have the power in the administration, the president, all of the people that supported the president, they are still 100% pushing the Israel is our closest ally. Do you see Turning Point USA criticizing that? Fox News, Daily Wire. In other words, anybody with institutional power in the right wing? Are there any congressional Republicans? I think Rand Paul criticized the occupation of Gaza, and Lindsey Graham, it's even too extreme for him. But is anybody criticizing the thing in itself, which is the Israeli influence? I don't really see it. So anyway, so I was just thinking about that a little bit. Everybody, it's so obvious. Everybody sees it. We're talking about it yesterday. And yet there seems to still be no institutional pushback. In spite of the fact that it is deeply unpopular, there seems to be universal recognition of what is happening. There is no organized opposition to it. Think about that. There, outside of this show, there is no organized opposition. And people like Tucker and people like Candace, they can do a show. And don't get me wrong, I think what they're doing is noble in a certain respect, and I think it's waking people up. But they can do innuendo, and they can do these kind of cutesy, you know, talking about double standards and just asking questions. But where is the organized opposition that says, clearly, there is a fifth column in the United States. It is Jewish in character. There is intense overlap with the state of Israel. It is influencing every aspect of our society. This is wrong, it's un-American, it's violating our sovereignty and independence, and it has to go. That arrangement has to stop. There is no national figure that is saying that. There is no national figure that other than me, that is their message. And there is no nationwide network or organization behind that. And people that are associated with me, or anybody that is hinting at something like that, are still blacklisted, still canceled. I think about somebody like myself. I'm still, for all of the liberalization of social media, like Facebook and Instagram, I'm still banned from those platforms, at least officially. I think some of my clips are going around, and you know, I'm testing the waters on Instagram. Maybe I can make a comeback there, but I'm still banned on YouTube, still banned on Twitch. Even people like Aiden Ross are not allowed to associate with me. I'm banned from Tim Pool, Patrick Bet-David, Piers Morgan, Tucker Carlson, you name it. Every show that you can think of. And so the question before us really is this a temporary reprieve? Is this a release rather than a real revolution? And you know what's interesting? This last thing I'll say, because I'm just giving you some thoughts, unorganized thoughts here. But yesterday I looked up Tucker Carlson's book. He put out a book, I think in 2019 or 2020, called Ship of Fools. And I forget why I was looking it up, but I looked up his book and I remembered it. And in the book, it said how America's elites are bringing the country to the brink of a revolution. And that was also the theme of his speech at the RNC last year. It was a very strange speech. It was about a 5-minute speech. Tucker came up and said that Trump could have leaned into divisiveness after he got shot, but instead he unified the country. And he said that was an admirable moment. And I thought to myself, isn't what we want a revolution? Is that not exactly what we're after? Is a complete revolution in thinking, in governance? Is that not what we're after? Is a fundamental transformation? Actual political regime change? And I think about the specific rhetoric that Tucker and others use about this MAGA Trump era. And there's always this insinuation that Trump is the consequence of mismanagement, and a bad one. That driving the country to a revolution is a bad thing. And that the system needs to get its act together to prevent that from happening. And I'm not advocating for like a violent revolution or political violence or chaos in the streets or anything like this. But I am an advocate for a fundamental political transition, a fundamental political transformation. And it seems like there are people like me who come from real America, that come from the heartland, that come from ordinary people. Their parents aren't in the CIA. Their parents don't live in Northern Virginia or DC. Their parents don't work for venture capital. They're not in Silicon Valley. My parents are normal. I had a normal upbringing. And someone like myself desires a radical political change. And then on the other side of this, you have people that are ostensibly on our side, talking to us about our concerns, about the feelings that we're having. And there's a subtle difference, but a difference all the same. And they talk about Trumpism and a revolution like it's imminent, but a bad thing. And this is what Tucker said about Trump. He said, you get Trump when the elites do a bad job. He said that Trump is what we deserve. He said that Trump is boorish and obnoxious and crude and basically a demagogue, and that he is what we deserve, like he's being inflicted on the country. And so there's a subtle difference in the way that ordinary people and these people from Washington, D.C. see the events of the past 10 years. We see it as a good thing. We see it as dynamic and transforming the country from a horrible status quo. They see it as a wake-up call for themselves. They, who are a part of the system, who worked at National Review and did Crossfire and are a part of these generational political families, these dynasties, they don't see it that way. They see it as a wake-up call for their people to get it together to prevent a revolution. They see it as mismanagement, which has caused the plebs to get too angry. And that sort of fits with this idea that I've been pushing out there really since Trump left office, which is that the establishment is seeking a compromise with the base. 4 years ago, the base was ready to burn down Washington, and they didn't believe the elections mattered or that our votes were counted. They thought that the media was lying. It was the fertile soil for a revolution. And I think that somewhere along the way, the establishment realized that they couldn't silence those people or jail those people or repress those people. So they had to accommodate them, or at least accommodate them on the surface. And so there was a handshake between the establishment and the base. And I think that initially that handshake, that compromise, was called Ron DeSantis. Maybe before that it was called J.D. Vance when he was being elevated in 2016. And I think when they realized that they weren't getting rid of Trump, that the Trump phenomenon was unstoppable, I think they realized that they would have to settle for Trump. That a new Trump 2024 would be that handshake. And if you pay attention to some of the key metrics, this is borne out in the data. In 2020, like 80% of Republicans believe that their votes weren't counted. In 2024, it's almost none of them. So in 4 years, all Republicans went from not believing in elections to, once again, believing in elections. Already, military recruitment numbers are up. 4 years ago, nobody was signing up for the military. Who would? You're getting kicked out for being conservative. You're getting kicked out for not being vaccinated. You're getting kicked out for being a white male. And you're going to fight and die in Ukraine, and they're censoring people for asking questions about it. Who would want to fight in the military? Well, since Trump got inaugurated, now all those numbers are way, way up. Recruitment numbers have never been higher in the past 10 or 15 years. And so it seems that what Trumpism has done in effect, and you can disagree about whether it was intentional or not, and you can disagree about whether this is a positive development or not. It's completely legitimate if you think that this was just the way that it happened. He won the argument. This is good for us. Those are all valid opinions. But it is indisputable. The fact is, the effect is the same regardless. Trump has shored up the efficacy and belief in credibility of the system. He has, in a word, restored the legitimacy of the government. And we've talked about that power dynamic for a long time. Our government and its authority rests on legitimacy and power, legitimacy and strength, force. The government works because people believe it has the right to rule, and it has the most guns. So if anybody disagrees, they'll get shot or locked up. You know, if a sovereign citizen says, you can't pull me over, well, guys with guns are going to keep coming until that person gets a driver's license or shows their papers or whatever. You get put in a cage. You understand? So the government works because people believe it does, and the people that reject the government's authority cannot overpower the government. Legitimacy was crumbling. Legitimacy as a function of authority was crumbling, and Trump came in and made it so that the other half of the country once again believed in its legitimacy. And it seems to have staved off that revolution that we're talking about. These people that are now running our government, I think they're just as liberal as Barack Obama. Is there anything meaningful that Elon Musk disagrees with Barack Obama about? Or let's say Hillary Clinton, for that matter. Does Mark Andreessen have any meaningful disagreements with Hillary Clinton? Or Joe Biden? Does Sean McGuire? Or are the disagreements that the Biden Justice Department and other regulatory agencies were investigating Elon's companies and holding back technological progress? So, you know, we have to think about Trump in a way that is a little bit more realistic about what we're actually getting here. And I don't know that it was a revolution. It's sort of interesting, particularly the military thing, because I also noticed this in other people. A lot of people used to say, and this always struck me as weird, they would always say that our government is failing because the military can't recruit people. They would say, we want to create a society where military recruitment goes up.
Continuing to monitor.
And I was thinking, why do we want to give the Pentagon more young white men? Why do we want to do that right now? I think that is true in a general sense. If the government was run by Catholics and we had a Catholic empire and it was, a base trad empire in space, like, yeah, I would want people to sign up. I would sign up. But if the Pentagon is sort of run by basically the same types of people, if you still have Trump pulling out a chair for Bibi Netanyahu, we still want to be increasing those numbers? And I heard that from a number of people, and I always thought it was a weird thing to say. And it kind of betrayed a different way of looking at all of these developments. And there were people like me that really thought we would have a true revolution. And then I think there were other people that thought eventually the revolution would be rolled back into the system and may moderately reform it, but not fundamentally change it. There were people like me that thought that Trump could be like an American Caesar and would really transform the government and would really change everything. And then I think there are other people that always saw Trump as someone who would eventually be fatigued, who would be defeated, and basically go back into the system in one way or another, with the system accepting some modest reforms. And they would view it as a correction rather than a true upheaval. That's kind of my thinking on the Trump phenomenon at this point. But anyway, so that's that. I'm trying to think. I feel like there was one other thing. Oh, one other thing I wanted to get into before we dive into the news. We have to pour one out tonight for our friend Joel Davis, who was permanently suspended on Twitter today, or X. And guys, this is not good. This is actually really important. It seems that X is now responding to censorship requests from Western European governments. This isn't the first time. So yesterday, Joel Davis, Thomas Sewell, and Blair Cottrell, as well as a number of their friends, these are all far-right Australian political activists, they were all permanently suspended from X on the same day. And what that tells us when they get banned in a wave like that is obviously that they were banned not because of their individual conduct on the site. So they didn't break the rules, they didn't post anything that got them banned. That shows that it was political. That they are all from the same country, a part of the same group, that they are all sharing the same ideology. That shows that they were banned as a political faction. Their political faction was shut down on X. And so, like I said, this is not them breaking the rules. This is not them posting anything illegal in their country or posting anything that violates X's terms of service. there was a decision made at X to ban this group. And the obvious question is, did X ban them at the request of their government? And I think obviously the answer is yes. Why would the X platform by itself take an interest in the Australian far right? It doesn't make much sense. So it would seem that either X, although it's less likely, banned them on their own initiative, or more likely that the Australian government, after receiving a report from a watchdog group, put in a request for X to ban these accounts. And X complied. Although there is all this chest thumping and bravado about X championing free speech against repressive governments like the judge in Brazil or like against Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, it seems that X has completely capitulated to a censorship request from a Western government, from an American ally. Instead of X telling Australia or their government that they would not honor the request, it seems they did it without even any transparency. Without any announcement, they didn't do it reluctantly. It seems that they obliged the Australian government with complete secrecy and banned all these accounts. And like I said, this is not the first time they've done this. X did the same thing in the United Kingdom. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but there was a far-right party in the United Kingdom called Patriotic Alternative. Mark Collette is a member of it. You've probably heard of him. I've collaborated with him before. The same exact thing happened to them. Again, either in 23 or 24. All of their members, all of their activists were all banned on the same day. It also happened a year or two ago to a number of American white nationalists. People like Jared Taylor never got their accounts banned, and then a number of American far-right activists like Kevin McDonald were banned by X without explanation in another ban wave. And when you put all of that together, you realize that the far right in North America, in Europe, and in Australia is being systematically censored on X, sometimes at the request of their government, sometimes in more mysterious ways, maybe through watchdog groups like ADL or SPLC. But in the UK, X banned Patriotic Alternative. In Australia, they banned Joel Davis, Thomas Sewell, and Blair Cottrell. In the United States, they banned Kevin McDonald and kept Jared Taylor suspended to this day, even though he had to sign up with a new account. And, you know, not to say I told you so, but this was my concern with Elon Musk, and this is what I spelled out earlier in the year. Although Elon is signaling to the far right, and I think sometimes signals that he's more far right than he really is, if you look at what he actually does in politics, he is working to empower the center right. He got Trump elected, but he also wants to curb Trump's immigration restrictionism when it comes to H-1Bs. He wants the Reform Party to be elected in the United Kingdom, but not some of the more ethnic nationalist elements in the British far right. He supports the AfD in Germany, but the more libertarian wing that is pro-Israel, and not the more extreme wing, which is led by other people. And I said from the very beginning that I am very skeptical of what Elon Musk is doing. I said it seems that he is putting all these center-right regimes in power, not because he's far right, not because he's a white nationalist or reactionary or far right ideologically, but because these center-right parties are going to do his bidding. With SpaceX, Tesla, with X, with any number of his other projects, it is going to shore up American power, the power of the CIA, the power of the DOD, the power of his companies, which are defense and intelligence contractors. And all of these European nationalists, people like Keith Woods and Joel Davis and Zoomer Historian, they all said, no, this is good. We should praise Elon. We have to give him credit when he pushes these narratives against immigration because it is raising our consciousness. It is a meta-political victory. And I'm not trying to say these things in a glib way, but these were the arguments. They said that we should join up with Elon and praise him and promote him, and we should try to join the chorus of anti-immigration activists. And I said, I think that's sort of missing the forest for the trees. In the sense that if Elon is opposed to the flourishing of the far right, then promoting him is actually not in our interest. And put another way, let me put this very simply. When we look at somebody like Tucker Carlson, or Elon Musk for that matter, or any of them, J.D. Vance, when they dog whistle and they do these hints and innuendo that they're more far right than they're letting on, that they're hiding their power level. And people say, why doesn't Tucker talk about race? Why doesn't he talk about Jews? When people look at Elon Musk and they say, why does he go to Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro? People say, well, he's hiding his power level. He's going through the motions to trick the left or the Israel lobby or whoever into thinking that he's on their side, when really he's secretly on our side. Is it lost on people that maybe you have it backwards? Is it lost on you that maybe somebody like Elon Musk is capable of the exact opposite? Which is that he is dog whistling to get you to think that he is on your side, to trick you, when in reality he is on their side? Has that ever crossed your mind? That people like Elon or people like Tommy Robinson or Ben Shapiro for that matter, or Tucker Carlson, has it ever crossed your mind that their innuendo, their smirking, chortling, when they hint that they might really know the real red pills, they might really know what's going on? Have you ever thought that that was designed to trick people like us into thinking that he's on our side rather than the other way around? And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case, but I do think that in Elon Musk's case, throughout the 2024 election, he was signaling to Americans that he was more right-wing than he really was, to get us to think that he was this based American nationalist in the same vein as Trump, when he really isn't. And he made that very clear. And we know that because after Trump got elected, Elon put all of us on blast, all the people he was supposedly dog whistling to. Apparently, he's got the same politics as us. He just couldn't say it. So he was sneaking the message in these coded ways. Well, after he got what he wanted, he called all of us hateful racists that were ruining the GOP, and we had to be annihilated. So who was tricked? And then, just as quickly, a week later, he starts talking about how Muslims are ruining the United Kingdom. And all these European nationalists took the bait. They said, oh, yeah, gee, that's a shame that he flipped on the American racists. But he's empowering the European racists. This is really good stuff. This is very credit-worthy. And now he starts banning them. Now he starts banning people from Australia. And here's the problem. Australia has hate speech laws. The United Kingdom has hate speech laws. So do other countries in Europe. And so what happens when Germany, when Belgium, when other countries put in a request to X to silence dissidents? Is Elon going to accept? Yes. Yes, he will. He will, as demonstrated by history, he will accept those requests. And with zero transparency and zero explanation, he is willing to delete these far-right factions from X. And if you delete these people, where are they going to go? Much has been said about Mark Zuckerberg's based transition. And for all that's been said about that, nobody's been let back on Instagram and Facebook. Nobody has been let back on YouTube. Has anybody been unbanned on any of those platforms? If they have, I am not aware of that. So X would just rejoin the other social platforms in banning the furthest right political factions. And here's the worst part. If we are relegated to Telegram, now we'll be ghettoized, because at least in 2021, when everybody was banned, everybody was looking for alternative platforms. Now that the vast majority of people have been let back on, it's only going to be a small handful of far-right activists that are not allowed inside the party. So this is now 2 countries, ostensibly 3, where factions of white nationalists have been banned by X, and there's been no coverage of it, no headlines, nobody's talking about it. And remember, before the election, they said, well, if we get rug pulled, we'll just pressure the administration. How are you gonna do that? You don't have a Twitter. How are you gonna do that? If everybody gets banned on X, which is the essence of the rug pull, how are you gonna apply pressure to the regime? You gonna call all those Jewish people? Let me know how that goes. Who's gonna advocate for us? Who are we gonna call? We're gonna call Jack Posobiec. Hey, Agent Poso, I know you don't have to. I know I have nothing to offer you, but could you please advocate for the far-right white nationalists to come back to X, please, out of the kindness of your heart? Hey, lots of luck with that idea. So if Ireland passes hate speech laws, bye-bye. Bye-bye. And it would be bad, and I'm laughing about that, but it's awful. I shouldn't laugh about it. You know, Eric Orville is right. I shouldn't laugh about it. That's not nice. And I like Keith, you know. I've been a little hard on him, but this is I'm a little bit glib about it because I warned you about this. I warned you from the beginning, and everybody thought they knew better. But if these European governments pass laws against anti-Semitism, which is what their far-right governments would do, bye-bye, bye, bye-bye, bye. The far-right wiped off the map. Hey, I don't want it to happen. White nationalists wiped off the map. It sucks, but that's what we're talking about. And hey, here's the relevance. Trump administration gets in, and they're talking about a DOJ crackdown on anti-Semites. So what happens when Pam Bondi, our new attorney general, who's like a Jewish agent, who said that the worst thing Biden did is let anti-Semitism happen on the campuses, what happens when she makes a call to her friend Elon? She walks down the hall and knocks on Elon's office door and says, hey, can we ban all anti-Semites? Hey, sure thing. Because you know that's bound to happen. What then? What then? You know, when they came for the Groypers, I said nothing because I was not a Groyper. When they came for Joel Davis, I said nothing because I was not a retard. When they came for Keith Woods, I had no one to stick up for me. I mean, this is how it goes. So it's a shame. It's terrible that this happened, but I told you so. And it's a crying shame. Everybody was so mad. I was laughing at Joel. I said, well, you know, you got to give Elon a lot of credit. And then they get mad. It's like, oh, sorry. You said that Elon tried to get me killed, banned 15 Groypers, took check marks from all of our friends, called me shit for brains, and then you say, hey, you got to give him a lot of credit. Your buddy gets banned, and by the way, he's not really your buddy, but your buddy gets banned, and I say, hey, I mean, this really sucks, but you got to give him credit, and then everybody's going to cry foul? Everybody says, hey, man, that's really not cool. That's not very white behavior. White people don't have personal grudges ever, and they never make fun of each other. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here with that. I saw Eric Arville subtweet me. He's like, you know, as white people, we gotta put our race ahead of petty personal disputes. Hey man, that's really not cool. You're never gonna insult your way to the presidency. And it's like, give me a fucking break. I've had enough of the subtweeting from the peanut gallery, okay? I've had enough of that. And this is how it always goes. I'm always right, they're always wrong, and then when they're seething and crying, then it's about, oh, well, you know, maybe Nick was right, but he's got a terrible attitude. maybe Nick was right, but you know, you shouldn't be mean. That's no excuse to be a jerk. Grow the fuck up. I mean, seriously. I'm the most attacked, hated. Like I have any shortage of people giving me shit. I throw a little bit the other way, and then it's a party foul. Sorry for party rocking. Uh-oh, party foul. He posted a Pepe with the middle finger up. Give me a break. So, he goes, this Mexican faggot he's personally insulting me. Well, hey, everyone else has my back. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Get a haircut. Ugh. These people make me, all these movement people, they need the movement because they can't get any viewership on their own, okay? You know, these crackers, then I'm gonna use that because they don't see me as white. These crackers need the movement. They gotta complain about the movement because they can't get any views on their own because they have no charisma. So you can hate all you want. I'm not getting enough attention. I'm not an e-celebrity. I don't have an army of cultists. Well, you know, maybe you got to take a page out of the playbook of the 25% Mexican then. And then you could sit at this table. Then you can play in the big leagues, okay? Until then, you can cry about how the movement, you know, salty salt masters, salty sea dogs on the internet. Oh, I can't believe Nick Fuentes is being a dick again. He's burning all his bridges. What a freaking jerk. Oh, man. We got it, but we're here to have fun. We're here to have fun, guys. Did you forget the first rule of white nationalism? Have fun. The first rule. The first rule of internet trolling, have fun. Yeah, we forgot to have fun. Everybody's got veins bulging out. They're in all black. You know, they're standing in front of the Capitol, doing these chants. Australia front. Hey, man, lighten up, Francis. We're here to have fun, guys. We're here to have fun. Industrial march music only. We're here to march and be mad about being white. Hey, man, we're here to have fun, guys. Lighten up a little bit, okay? We're all gonna be okay. I like these guys, you know? I talk a lot of shit. I like these guys, you know? I like Joel. I like Arvel. You know, I'm just giving them a hard time. I'm just giving them a little bit of a hard time. It's no hard feelings. It's not I don't take it personal. Why are you taking it personally? I'm not taking it personally. Oh man, that's good stuff. Anyway, so that's, who cares about any of that though? We're gonna get into American pop, but this is a big problem. So I mean, all that stuff aside, this is a really big problem. If X is enforcing censorship requests from governments, expect to see the far right disappear. That's a big fucking problem. And that goes for me, that goes for Keith, that goes for Joel, that goes for everybody. That goes for South Africa, Australia, North America, Europe. If Elon starts banning everybody that's far right, hey, guess what? Congratulations. You fell for it again. I saw this coming, but this is a big problem. And I said on X today, it's like we're speed running Twitter. What happened the first time? Jack Dorsey in 2013 says, or 15, he says, we're the free speech wing of the free speech party. Twitter's for free speech. It's for everybody. And nobody is banned. And then they ban like one or two people. Trump gets elected. Then they start purging the far right people. Then they start taking check marks. Then it's shadow banning. Then it's banning people for questioning the vaccine. What's happening now? Elon Musk buys Twitter in 2022. It's going to be a free speech platform. Everything under the law will be permitted. Trump gets elected. They start banning a couple people. They start purging the far right. They start taking check marks. You are here. When do they start banning tons of people? When do they start shadow banning? I think they're already doing that. So this is a very big problem. And you know what? I don't know what you can even do about it. Joel is telling people to demand that his account gets reinstated. I think he's sort of missing the point here. We're not in charge. So, that's a sad fact of the matter. And this is why I said from the very beginning, if Trump gets elected, he's going to suffocate the far right. That was my big concern. And a lot of people don't know what, for all the talk of meta politics, nobody really knew what that meant, but now you're starting to see what it means when I say that Trump getting elected is going to de-radicalize everybody and suffocate the far right. It's exactly what's happening. People are being de-radicalized, and the actual racialists, the actual revolutionaries, they're being ground under the heel of a philo-Semitic center-right, or in some cases these liberal governments, and no one is going to be because we won. Because we won. So out of the two alternatives, this is why I say Kamala will be worse, but in some ways better for us. Now you're starting to see why. If Kamala won, it would flourish for us. It would flourish.
Like 3 of them took all my life. I had full
and there would
health.
be no reason to ban people like us.
And
if we were banned, we would all be banned, and we'd all go to an alternative
fucking
platform.
bullshit, dude. I should have used my
It's
flares,
impossible
right?
to tell the
If I tossed
future
a flare,
in like a hypothetical,
been all right.
the same risks were not there. So anyway,
Oh, well.
but I want to move on. I want to get into our news stories tonight. Our first story is about this transgender girls ban, something very similar here. And look, we've talked about this a million times.
GG's, bro.
Here's the crux of it, okay? There is no such thing as transgender people. That's the end of it. That's the beginning of it. That's the end of it. Somewhere along the way, we were told that these biological anomalies like intersex people or hermaphrodites, as well as extremely feminine men who cross-dress and extremely masculine females that cross-dress, and then a number of sexual fetishists. We were told that all of them taken together meant that there is no such thing as male and female, that we're going to divorce a sociological conception, a construct called gender, from a biological reality of sex, of chromosomes and reproductive organs and all of that, hormones. And they said that once we do this, we can have men that can be called women, and we can have women that can be called men, and they can rearrange their body parts, and they can change their hair and their clothes, and this is going to be a new frontier of stripping away the particularities, the essential characteristics that make us who we are. Just like we eradicated race and sex as categories, we're now going to eradicate the category of basically biology itself. And we've always said, as Catholics, as reactionaries, that cannot be done. And by the way, it really is just Catholics that believe there are no such thing as transgenders. When you look into a lot of these techno-optimists, when you look into these transhumanists, they don't reject the concept of transgenderism. People like Richard Hanania hang out with transgenders. They think they're cool. If you go to a Bronze Age pervert party, if you go to Curtis Yarvin's house, you may just stumble into a transgender wedding or a transgender fashion show. And so, by the way, this concept of gender bending is very old. It goes back a very long time, and it exists in many different cultures. It is only Catholics. It's actually a Jewish phenomenon, and I say that in a good way, that we say, no, there is strictly male and female, there is no ambiguity, we can't change those things, and we shouldn't play into those things. Because when you look at these secular classicist types that celebrate the ancient Greeks and the Straussians and others, when you look at a lot of these people, they believe that a moderated form of transgenderism is acceptable. And they believe that about homosexuality or pederasty. They believe that too. They just do. So it is really a traditional Catholic perspective, and really only a Christian perspective, that says there will be no transgenders, period. They cannot exist. Anybody that is transgender has some sort of issue, a moral issue, a psychological issue, in some rare cases, a biological issue. And so when we see these things like transgenders in girls' sports or bathrooms, well, the obvious answer is that this is where reality comes into conflict with ideology. This is where attempting to ignore or paper over those, perceived constructed identities of male and female meets the reality of biological advantages for men and women in something like strength, speed, athletics. And so obviously we oppose that. Obviously we're against that. And now Trump has signed an executive order that says that the Department of Justice under Title IX is going to withhold federal funding for universities or university athletics, K through 12 schools that continue to have transgenders participate in female sports. And this is a story from the New York Times. It says, quote, President Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday aimed at prohibiting transgender women and girls from competing in women's sports, directing agencies to withdraw federal funding for any schools that refuse to comply. The order, titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, and signed on National Girls and Women in Sports Day, sought to deliver on an issue that Mr. Trump made a key theme of his campaign, which denounced transgender athletes. The order has directed the State Department to push the International Olympic Committee to make similar changes by making eligibility determined according to sex and not gender identity or testosterone reduction. The Trump administration is using the Education Department to carry out the policy by changing its interpretation of Title IX, the 1972 law prohibiting sex discrimination in programs that receive federal funding. The Biden administration put forth a rule last year that made discrimination or harassment based on sexual orientation or gender identity a violation of federal civil rights law. But last month, a federal judge vacated that regulation, providing Trump officials a path to using the Title IX standards set in Trump's first term. Several states and groups immediately vowed to challenge the order. The change could also compel athletic governing bodies such as the National Collegiate Athletic Association to update their policies to comply with the order. In January, the NCAA's president had called for greater legal clarity on the issue from regulators and indicated that the organization would tailor its stance on transgender athletes to correspond with federal law. So it's a good ruling. This is a good thing. But I would say in the first place, here's my issue. The people that are running the country are not actually morally opposed to transgenderism or any of it at all. Case in point, the day after the presidential election, Trump and Elon Musk met with Caitlyn Jenner at Mar-a-Lago. Caitlyn Jenner. Look it up. There's a photo of Elon, Trump, and Caitlyn Jenner smiling and arms wrapped around each other's shoulders, celebrating Trump's win the day after the election. Case in point, people like Sam Altman, who just received a $500 billion investment for OpenAI, is gay married with surrogate children. People like Keith Raboy and Jacob Hellberg, who are on Trump's team. Jacob Hellberg was appointed in the Trump administration, are gay married. It goes on and on and on like this. Dave Rubin, same situation, gay married with surrogate adopted children. This kind of stuff happens all the time in the conservative space, in our new Trump administration, in Silicon Valley. And Donald Trump and Elon Musk are tolerant of it. They're tolerant of it, and they do not take a strong moral stance against it. And the reason why is because neither of them are Catholic. Trump is vaguely, generically Christian, culturally Christian. Elon Musk, I believe, is an atheist or an agnostic and has no affinity or relationship with Christianity at all. And so as a consequence, they don't see this as a moral issue. They see it as a sociological phenomenon. And that's why the regulations ban transgender surgeries for very young kids. And that's why the regulations pertain to sports for children, or just sports altogether. But in a sense, what they're really doing is just rolling back the society to the 2000s, the 1990s. I mean, when did Dog Day Afternoon come out? 1969 or something like that? This stuff has been with us for a very long time. It's been going on. And you have people in the government that are tolerating it, that think there's nothing wrong with it. Now, the reason why this is a good thing, one, is because it's moral, but two, also because it's normal. We like to see, and it's not that I oppose these things, I think they're good. My first issue is that I actually don't think our regime is very right-wing at all when it comes to these issues. They're certainly more right-wing than the most extreme left-wing people, but they're not really right-wing at all. They're not very right-wing. The other issue that I have is that we like these policies because they are morally correct, or more morally correct, and we like these policies because they're normal. But what I fear is happening is that rather than reflecting a retracing of wokeism or a recession of wokeism, it seems like all this is doing is putting a cap on wokeism, and thereby ceding all of the ground that wokeism has won up until this point. And what I mean by that is, you hear this refrain from Republicans all the time. Gays are fine, trannies are fine. The only problem is when they try to force good conservatives to transition their kids. It's like, but everything up until that, we are now acknowledging is totally okay and totally fine. Porn, contraceptives, feminism, gay marriage, transgenders, it's all fine right up until the worst of the worst, where we've capped it. And even on other issues like race. When I think about the country that I live in, is the most offensive thing that is going on that there are transgenders in girl sports, or that our neighborhoods are completely alien to us because of racial diversity?
Your probability of survival has just
honestly,
increased
it's
to
the
unlikely, but plausible.
for me. And I say that, people might say, well, that's not very Christian of you, or something. But I'm telling you how I feel. I'm telling you, this is my gut feeling. I feel worse that our neighborhoods are becoming unrecognizable because of the languages they speak, because of the way that they look, because of the culture that they have, because of the places that they're from, the fact that they're completely foreign. That feels worse to me than that there's one transgender person and that there's one gay person. Because that's really what the statistics say. It's like 1% of the population is trans, it's like 3%. And it seems like this is where wokeism, this is where we're getting off, at this station from the woke train. And I don't know if I'm really happy about where we are. It's like we've accepted multiracialism, we've accepted feminism, we've accepted all of this other sexual perversity or promiscuity or degeneracy, but we're just going to cap it off at some of the worst of the worst. And it's not to say that those aren't good developments. They are. It's good that they're rolling these things back, and it's certainly good for the children that would have been affected by it. So there is a material good here, like real flesh and blood people are benefiting from it, and for that reason I support it. And there's always a question of, obviously, rolling all of it back wasn't on the ballot this year. But I think that's why it's very important to keep pushing. When people tell me that I'm black-pilling, that I'm never happy, I'm never satisfied, on some level, yeah, I'm really not happy. I'm not going to be satisfied until we've gone all the way. If the country is 50% non-white, and you still have this explosion of degeneracy, but we have some of these executive orders like, okay, the girls' soccer game is going to look a little bit more normal, I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied with that. That's still not the country that I grew up in. And I grew up in the 2000s. Forget about the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s. Forget about the 19th century. I grew up in the 2000s, and it's still unrecognizable to me. I grew up when Lady Gaga and Glee were like a cultural phenomenon, and it's unrecognizable to me today, after the supposed victory. So I think that it's very important that our push for normalcy doesn't stop with girls' sports and bathrooms. It has to go even further and has to expand into other areas, like having a country of foreigners. That's not normal either. And that has to change in one of two ways. Either you need to shut off the immigration and start deporting people, or white people need to be allowed to live in their own neighborhoods. It's really that simple.
Organisms,
white people need to be able to preserve their culture
and internal organs,
and find ways to organize and live in a society where we can live among our own kinds of people. And that means that socially it has to be destigmatized, and that means that legally it has to be made legal. It needs to stop being prohibited from happening.
The scanner can be used to synthesize.
Because I don't know about you guys, but all this, everything that's going on, it is not changing the fundamental issue, which is that we are living in an alien nation. And that's why Jared Taylor said, I don't know how much of a victory Trumpism is for the white people anymore. It's a victory in some ways, but you cannot call it a victory for white identity, strictly speaking. And as a Catholic, you can't call it a victory for Christianity either, necessarily. I mean, we're getting some stuff out of it, but it's not really delivering anything that feels very fulfilling. So anyway, so that's that. But I do want to move on into our big story tonight. I want to talk a little bit more about the Gaza proposal from Trump yesterday. And of course, that was our big story last night. Donald Trump hosted Bibi Netanyahu at the White House for his first foreign visit of his presidency, and they talked about a lot of things, including potential strikes on Iran. They talked about the Abraham Accords, and they talked about the ceasefire in Gaza. And the big headline from the day was Trump's shocking proposal for the United States to annex the Gaza Strip and exiling every Palestinian that lives there and turning it into some kind of a smart city, some kind of international city, international free trade zone, international trust. Light on the details and a totally new, fresh proposal. But this is what everybody's been talking about for the past day. And we talked all about it last night on the usual stuff. Israel's control over our government, and how there's this deference to Netanyahu, and how he's paying the piper here. He's singing for his supper. Trump got $200 million from the Israel lobby, and now they're coming to collect on that investment. We talked about all the good stuff last night. But tonight I want to talk specifically about that proposal in itself, because something we didn't talk too much about last night, but which I talked about a little bit, is that I don't think this is a serious proposal. I don't think that when Trump says the United States will own the Gaza Strip, we're going to clean it up and we're going to turn it into a territory and it'll be a U.S. city, I don't think that is the end game. I don't think that is the real plan. That doesn't mean that it is completely divorced from the real plan. I think it is in the realm of the real plan. It is certainly part of the conversation of the real plan. But I think the big thrust of what was disclosed yesterday is that this was a starting point for a very, very complex negotiation between 4 or 5 parties. This is a negotiation between Israel and Hamas. It's a negotiation between the United States and Israel. It's a negotiation between Israel, the United States, and Saudi Arabia, between Saudi Arabia and the Palestinians. It's a negotiation between the United States and Iran, between Iran and Israel. There are really 5, maybe 6 major players here, and there are so many moving pieces. It's the most complex deal. And like I said yesterday, it runs through many significant issues. It's not just the Israel-Palestinian conflict, but it's also the Israel-Iranian conflict. It's also the Abraham Accords, and whether Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries will continue to entrench their relationship with Israel. And it's a negotiation for the United States of averting a war with Iran, bringing an end to the hostilities in Gaza, and bringing the Gulf countries into a bloc with Israel to oppose Iran, Russia, and China. So it's a very, very complex deal. And when Donald Trump goes out, like he did yesterday, and drops a bombshell on everybody, and this is a proposal that is new, this was not a part of the conversation yesterday morning, and it's something that shocks literally everybody. I don't know anybody that's happy with this proposal other than maybe the furthest right elements in the state of Israel. That is the intended effect. And if you've been following the Trump administration for the past 8 years, or even the Trump campaigns, this is classic Trump. This is what he does. This is the art of the deal. And it's not necessarily to say that this is 5-dimensional chess or 64-dimensional chess. It's not to say that there is a convoluted plan that is going to defy reality. I actually don't think it's very complex what he did. I think what Trump excels at is tactics more than strategies. So what I mean by that is when we say something like 5-dimensional chess, 64-dimensional chess, what people think is that there is this very convoluted, very complex, very long-term strategy. There is a very rigid plan that he understands from the beginning that no one else does, and I don't think that's what this is. I think this is a ploy. Rather than a 5-dimensional chess play that is unfolding with this move, I think this is a ploy. This is a tactic. And this is what he always does, which is to say, when he gets in office and when he starts a negotiation on anything, he drops a bomb. He says something shocking. It gets headlines. It surprises everybody. It's something new, something totally unpredictable, and when he says it, everybody is surprised, angry, and everybody's first reaction is, that will never happen. That is unacceptable. And that's the point. Because Trump, as a businessman, as a real estate developer, and maybe more than anything as a deal maker that puts together complex deals, he understands the psychology of a negotiation between multiple parties. And when Trump goes into the room where everybody says these are our demands, and everybody is at an impasse. Hamas wants to remain in power. Israel says Hamas cannot remain in power. The Palestinians want to stay. Israel wants them to go. Israel wants to deal with Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia won't make a deal unless there is a Palestinian state. Israel says that's unacceptable. The United States want Israel to stop the fighting, but Israel won't stop the fighting until Hamas is eradicated. Hamas can't be eradicated unless the fighting goes on and is more brutal. That's unacceptable to the U.S. The U.S. wants Saudi Arabia to make a deal with Israel, but there's that impasse there.
For those accustomed to synthetic
and so there is this gridlock here. Everybody is at an impasse. There is this rigid situation where everybody is checking everybody else, and nothing can move forward. And that's where Trump comes in and drops a proposal like this and changes the way everybody thinks about the issue. It also changes what everybody thinks about what is possible or what is likely. Israel says, we're going to go into Gaza and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. The Palestinians say, well, we're not going to stop fighting and we're going to make it brutal. And Saudi Arabia says, we're not going to move. And what we want is for Palestine or some Arab group to control the Strip. If Trump comes in and says, no, we're going to come in and we're going to take the Strip. Now everybody says, whoa, whoa. Nobody wants that. Israel doesn't necessarily want that in that form. The Palestinians definitely don't want that. Saudi Arabia doesn't want that. Jordan, Egypt doesn't want that. Iran doesn't want, nobody wants that. So I think this is classic Trump, where he comes in and says something that knocks everybody off balance and interrupts their cycle of thinking. He interrupts their loop of thinking, where they're looking at everybody else is looking at each other, they have expectations, there's this communication relay. Trump is getting in the middle of that process, interrupting and causing everybody to stop and think again. And by introducing a new option, he's also changing the horizon of possibilities. Everybody thinks there's maybe 2 options or 3 options. There is an understandable, a comprehensible set of permutations of how this can play out. And when Trump introduces a fork, a new one, now it changes everybody's horizon of what might be possible. Well, they hadn't considered that America might own the Strip, so it's something new there as well. So I think that when Trump says we're going to annex Gaza, I don't believe that, strictly speaking, will happen. I don't think that America will move the CENTCOM headquarters to Gaza and annex it and make it an American territory. I don't think, strictly speaking, that will happen. But I think that something like that will happen. But first, I want to get into the story and support this a little bit. This is from the New York Times. It says, quote, when President Trump announced his proposal for the United States to take ownership of Gaza on Tuesday, he shocked even senior members of his own White House and government. While his announcement looked formal and thought out, reading from a sheet of paper, his administration had not even done the most basic planning to examine the feasibility of the idea, according to 4 people with knowledge of the discussions. It wasn't only the Americans scrambling. The announcement came as just as much of a surprise to the Israeli visitors. Soon before they walked out for their news conference, Mr. Trump surprised Netanyahu, telling him he planned to announce the Gaza ownership idea. That in itself is a surprise. Netanyahu is expecting they're going to go into this press conference and Trump is going to demand that Jordan and Egypt take the Palestinians. And Trump says, hey, listen, they're in front of a hot microphone. The press is gathered. And this is a make or break trip for Netanyahu. This is make or break. If Trump leaves the United States, if he leaves Washington without firm support from Trump, his government may explode when he goes back to Israel. So Netanyahu's there. He needs to project strength. He needs to project stability coming from his coalition government. Needs to demonstrate that Trump is in lockstep with him. And Trump goes and says, hey, man, just real quick before we take questions, I'm going to announce that the United States will annex the Strip. What do you think Netanyahu's reaction is? If you're, and you've been in situations like this, that sinking feeling when your heart drops, you start swimming. Thoughts, well, what does that mean? Was he serious? That's the whole point. It's what he does. It's what he does every time. It's a play. It's a cheap play. And we know that because he didn't tell it. It's not a real plan. He didn't campaign on that. He didn't talk to his advisors about that. They didn't assess the feasibility. There's nothing in the works about that because it's not real. That's an idea that popped in his head. And it's really a negative idea in the sense that it's not a positive vision. He's throwing it out there to throw a wrench into the existing framework, into the existing perspective or framing of the topic. And that is meant to change the calculus of all of the players involved and for them to reevaluate what's possible. That's the whole point of it. So when they say Trump was kicking this idea around, but he didn't do any feasibility assessment or any of the usual stuff, I don't believe that Trump will deploy boots on the ground in Gaza if he has anything to say about it. And he might not. I assume Trump knows it would be wildly unpopular to embroil American soldiers in Gaza, involved in the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. You have to know that he understands that on a political level. And for that reason, I don't think it's strictly speaking, in that way, in that particular way, it's a serious proposal. I think it was a ploy. With that being said, so I'll throw a bone to some of the plan trusters, because the plan trusters said he's not serious. Some of them, and there was a spectrum, some of them said we're going to take Gaza, and it's a good thing. It's actually a good thing because it's going to be a crusader state. It's going to be a confessional state, and that's fucking based. That's just retarded. That's just, you're dumb and you're coping. Other people were saying Trump isn't serious, and you're taking the bait, and you shouldn't take it at face value. Now, those people are also coping, but they're not stupid about what Trump does, because they are right in the sense that it is bait. It is meant to get exactly the reaction that it got. Now, the question is, what is the real plan, and why would he say that? Well, there's something interesting, which is that Netanyahu has a very fragile coalition government in Israel. He's got his Likud party, and then he has these religious Zionists, and they're giving him the votes to have a majority in their legislature, in the Knesset. So you've got this guy, Bezalel Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and these are your religious Zionists. These guys are as extreme as it gets. They're open about desiring greater Israel. They do not want the fighting in Gaza to stop until the Palestinians are all gone and the settlers go in. They support Jewish settlements in the West Bank and in Gaza. They think that Israel should be in the Sinai. They think that Israel should take over Jordan. These guys are as radical and bloodthirsty as it gets. And they have said that unless Netanyahu fights the war until Hamas is eradicated, they will pull the plug, they will stop supporting his government, and he will lose the majority. And if he loses the majority, he is no longer the prime minister. And if he's no longer the prime minister, he goes to jail because he's being prosecuted right now. So the crisis has to go on for Netanyahu's sake, and it also has to go on to satisfy these extremists so that they will keep his government in power. So when Trump sent his envoy, Steve Witkoff, to Israel to negotiate the ceasefire a couple of weeks ago, it was these ministers, finance and national security minister, that said, we do not support the ceasefire unless we get a commitment that we could start the fighting again. They opposed the ceasefire insofar as it represented a commitment to a permanent settlement without destroying Hamas. But once they got reassurance from Netanyahu and from presumably the United States, that it was temporary and the fighting would continue, they supported the deal. Now, it would seem that Netanyahu is maybe more realistic, that he knows, just like the military and Israeli intelligence says, they can't kill all of Hamas without really just removing all the Palestinians. Maybe Netanyahu's more realistic about what can really be done here. When Trump says, no, we are going to get rid of all the Palestinians, this charges up the far right in Israel and puts pressure on Netanyahu to do something that maybe he can't do. And so you wonder if maybe this is some way of influencing the internal politics in Israel and creating an impossible situation for Netanyahu. Another way to look at it is that there is a big question mark about what they're going to do about the Palestinians. Will they stay or go? And if they stay, who's going to run Gaza? Because it can't be Hamas, and presumably it won't be the Palestinian Authority, and it won't be the Palestinians themselves. So it will have to be the Arabs. But Israel doesn't want it to be the Arab countries. They think that's unacceptable. So it's going to have to be other partners. And these other partners won't come in. The Arabs won't come in, and other partners won't come in if the Palestinians are kicked out. So if they get kicked out, everyone's going to be angry. It's very untenable. No one will support this diplomatically. It's very difficult. But if they stay, there's this question of who's going to run it. If it's not the Palestinians, the Arabs won't buy in. The Israelis don't even want the Arabs to buy in. So if the United States comes in and says, well, we're going to run the whole strip, everybody says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, Israel wants to run it. The Arabs want to run it. The Palestinians want to stay. Everybody says, we reject Palestinians leaving and America running it. So is this meant to encourage and force the Arabs to rethink their negotiating position? Or maybe the Israelis saying, hey, look, if you're not going to make a deal, then we'll just take it. If the Arabs won't make a deal, then us and the Israelis will take it. It seems like it's putting pressure on everybody in the region to reconsider their red lines and their demands. Because as it stands right now, it seems that Netanyahu is going to resume the fighting, go back in the Strip. This is going to be very unpopular for Trump. It's going to postpone any kind of settlement with Saudi Arabia. It may ultimately lead to a war with Iran. And the only way that Israel stops the fighting in Gaza is if there's some kind of way where there's administration of the Strip that does not fall into the hands of Hamas with some sort of guarantee. And that would need to come from the Arabs, and they won't agree unless there's statehood, which Israel doesn't want. So it seems like and it's sort of a complex thing. It's hard to read exactly, precisely what Trump is trying to do here, who he's squeezing in particular. But I think in general, the point was to throw out something completely unacceptable to maybe get every other partner, every other party to the negotiation in the region to consider changing their minds about what they will or will not accept in an ultimate settlement. I think that's what he intended to do. I think he intended to blow up the discussion, change the frame, hardball Netanyahu or maybe some of the others. Although it's not really hardball, because ultimately the Israelis want the Palestinians out. And I think even if it belonged to America, I don't know that they would really mind that. Because the next president would just give it to him. Trump would probably give it to him. So I don't know that they really don't want that. But I don't think America would do that necessarily, although they could. Now, that's the intention. I think, though, that Netanyahu is used to dealing with Trump. And I think that at this stage in the game, here we are, 9 years in, 8 years in, 10 years, I mean, really, we're 10 years in. I think Netanyahu has seen this before, okay? This guy's been in power for like 20 years. And when Trump does these cheap tricks, when he throws out, oh, I'm gonna take over, I think that some people are rattled by this. Denmark is rattled because the proposal for Greenland is actually super serious. They've been on the ground there for a long time. There has been a lot of groundwork being laid over there for some sort of presence in Greenland. We've got Space Force there, and there are real talks about expanding the American footprint there. That's fucking real, and they know that. This seems to me like sort of cheap, classic Trump relying on an old bag of tricks, saying something in a press conference, very short term, getting a headline. We have to actually wait to see what his real moves are. And the reason I say that is because Trump is giving them everything that they want. Trump is trying to push through their $1 billion arms transfer. He's trying to push through another $8 billion in aid for Israel, additional aid. Trump removed the sanctions on the Israeli settlers. He redesignated Ansar Allah a terrorist group. Trump said we're reinstating maximum pressure on Iran. So at the same time that you can't take it at face value what he's saying, I don't think when he said we're going to take over Gaza, I think what will ultimately happen is within that realm, I think that eventually Gaza will be turned into a trust. It will be administered by multiple countries. I think a lot of the Palestinians will be forced out, if not all of them. So I think that it's in the area of what will happen, although not necessarily America owning it. I think that would be better, but I don't think that's going to happen. But it's in the ballpark of what will happen. With all of that being said, those are the intentions. At the same time, you can't take it at face value. You also can't listen to the talk more than you observe the actions. And so as much as Trump can use the bully pulpit, as much as Trump can use rhetoric, listen, the Biden administration has some strong rhetoric. Every week, the Biden administration was leaking to the Washington Post that he called Netanyahu an asshole. That he called him Netanyahu and said, hey man, you're a real friggin' jerk. And then like a fucking bitch, he would leak it to the Washington Post. Anonymous sources says Biden called Netanyahu a jerk to his closest advisors. Like, this is our pussy country. You know, a real country would be like doing stuff. They wouldn't be, you know, doing a whisper campaign, playing the telephone game. Did you know that Biden told so-and-so who told so-and-so that Netanyahu's a jerk and doesn't like him? Like, that's our superpower, by the way. So it's rhetoric. Biden had rhetoric. Trump has had rhetoric. Trump has done all this stuff before. Let's look at the actions. I'll add one other wrinkle. Netanyahu's going to go home, and unlike Trudeau and Mexico, who have no leverage, Netanyahu has leverage over the United States. Netanyahu is extremely ballsy, extremely bold. He's got leverage over our government. And so unlike Trudeau and Mexico, who kind of have, I mean, they can do nothing. They're getting raped. Like when America says 25% tariff, this is rape, okay? This is like a very tall man standing behind a very small woman and putting his hand on her shoulder and saying, hey, sweetheart, with like alcohol on his breath. When America says 25% tariff on Canada, when America says Governor Trudeau, this is like a 300-pound man who's 6'3" or 6'5", putting his hand on a tiny woman's shoulder and in like a really breathy alcohol way saying like, hey babe, you looking really hot. That's what we're doing to Canada and Mexico. But when Trump does that to Israel, this is like a UFC face-off. This is like two equally matched opponents. Arguably, it's like a little guy next to a big guy. It's like Joe Pesci going up against a really tall jack guy and saying, hey man, you don't want, hey man, guess what? How about we take Gaza? It's just it's totally different story. Israel has the cards here because Israel has the billionaires, the cyber. Israel has the Mossad. They have the intelligence spying superpower. They have the fifth column in our country. And although Netanyahu is vulnerable because of the domestic political situation, he has a hand to play as well. I mean, it may be evenly matched, or maybe even Israel has the advantage. So that's why I look at it, and when people say that you can't take it at face value, he's not serious, that's true, but what he is saying is in the ballpark of what will happen reasonably. I also don't think it'll be effective. So when they say that, they're saying that as a cope. And with that being said, we know that the Israelis, they want more, and they're going to try to get it. I don't think that Ben Shapiro and Miriam Adelson and all these Israeli Jews got Trump in office so that he can make a deal with Iran. And you think they're gonna sit on their hands while that happens? I mean, they know something. They know something that we don't. Netanyahu and Shapiro and all these people, they were all behind Trump for a reason. And the idea that Trump is going to lean on them and they're going to sit on their hands and wait for Trump to ink a deal with Iran and not have them take apart their nuclear program or whatever, and they're just going to impotently sit there like, I'm really unhappy with this. This isn't what I voted for. I think that's very naive. And yet that's what people think is going to happen. So that's my assessment of the situation, but it's in flux. Nothing is certain right now. But what Trump said the other day, it's all very concerning. It's a lot of pro-Israel stuff. Again, you have to judge it by the actions. Trump is giving Israel everything that they want. He's not using any real leverage against them. And when he says we're going to kick all the Palestinians out and make it American, I'm not sure if that's meant to pressure Israel as much as it is meant to pressure the Arabs. At least it's more, I think it's more pressure on the Arabs than it is on the Israelis. So that's my take on that. But I want to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this.
The fabricator draws from available data to provide environment-appropriate equipment.
It's more complicated stuff. More complicated than it seems. I mean, everybody likes it. And don't get me wrong. Meta-politically, you got to give everyone credit for just trashing Israel. That's always a good thing. You know? Everybody's like, duh, Trump is going to kick all the Palestinians out and make it a colony? What the fuck? It's good that people are saying that. Even if he didn't really mean it, it's good that people are saying that. Even if that's not ultimately exactly what will happen, it's good. It's delicious that people are. That's going viral and mainstream. It's awesome. So I'm not going to go and, like, push back on that, but I am going to say that I think that Trump's trying to do something here. It might be a little more subtle than it seems on its face. But that's that. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say.
The pretty fly white guy said $5. King Baldwin should control Uganda. Michael Knowles have a serious take about Israel challenge. Impossible.
Yeah, like, you know, and I'm getting really sick of that. These people are trying to be cute. It's like Israel has murdered 100,000 people there. It's obviously expansionist. They're enabled to do that because they control our government. It's a scandal. And everyone knows that, but they're doing these just like gay little faggoty jokes about it. Oh, it's gonna be a crusader state. It's like, no, it isn't, and you know it isn't. You're just saying that because you have nothing else to say, because if you were to oppose it, you would get fired. If you were to support it, you would look like a bitch. So they just take this third route where they're gonna be delusional, and they're gonna be a delusional, it's sort of like a submissive prey thing. You know how they say like a monkey will laugh when like a bigger monkey, when the alpha monkey challenges it? You know, the monkey will show its teeth and, you know, grin to show that it's not a threat to like the alpha chimpanzee. That's sort of like when Andrew Torba and Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh do this kind of, oh, King Baldwin's gonna be a crusader state, dog. It's sort of like that. It's sort of like, please don't kill me. I'm not a threat. I'm not against Israel. I would never expose you. So, I hate that. You gotta be serious about it.
Does Israel have leverage on our politicians? I've given this a lot of thought. Do they have leverage on even new politicians? I've been saying they are going to eventually take USA. Maybe they already have.
Is this a real super chat?
Crystal McDroid sent $10. Would it be even half as enlightened as I am now without you breaking the mold and showing what true discernment looks like? It's my birthday. All I want is for NJF to wish me happy Godspeed.
Happy birthday, man. Hope it's a good one. I hope you're young. The older you get, birthdays start to suck. Getting old is brutal. I was thinking about that today, this morning. It's like, damn, dude. You're never gonna be a kid again. Because I have this, like, this may come across super cringe and inarticulate, but I'm gonna go there anyway. There's like this distinct feeling, this like very distinct feeling that I remember when I was a kid. And it was like this, like, melancholic feeling of like an innocence lost. Like, it's so hard to describe. I can't even describe it. But it's like, it's almost like I can't even describe it. It's such a weird feeling. But it's a feeling that you can only have when you're a kid. It's something to do with innocence. It's something to do with despair. And I can't quite place it. And one day I'm gonna articulate it, but I can't do it yet. I think about it a lot, but I can't really find the words for it. It's like an angst or anxiousness that you can only have when you're innocent. It's like an anxiety that you can only have when you're innocent. When you're not self-conscious. And anyway, I will never be able to articulate this feeling in words, but I had this thought, and I'm like, damn, I'm 26. I will never. It was almost like an unrealized feeling. I will never feel that feeling ever, outside of dreams. And that's a tough pill to swallow. I listen to certain songs, and it evokes that feeling, and I'm like, wow. Once you're over that hump, once you're over that hill of youth, and you're into cynicism and bitterness and fundamentally like a level of self-knowledge or self-consciousness, it's this irreversible process. It's this irreversible transition, and the thought of like not being able to like ever go back, like the state of consciousness is just closed off. That's a tough pill to swallow, because some things about getting old I don't mind as much. I mean, you don't look as young. I hate that, but I can deal with that. The aches and pains, which is like real for some reason. Like my fucking joints hurt now. I don't know if that's because I'm lazy or because I'm fat. But like my joints hurt, or dysgenic probably. I could deal with that, you know, whatever. But it's like this. It's really the youth. Not having that youthful factor. That's like the part that really gets you. Every year that you grow older, you just move further and further away from that, and it becomes a distant memory. So anyway, so happy birthday. Hope it's. I hope you're young. So I hope you're young. I hope you're a young person and having a good young birthday. If you're not, that's fine too. Happy birthday. But I appreciate the sentiment. I'm just having a moment here. So for people who say, well, I don't know what he's talking about. Well, that's gay or whatever. Well, I mean, you can feel whatever you want about it. I'm just telling my truth, okay? I'm just trying to convey something that touched me today that I thought about. So I don't know how to even describe it. It's such a weird feeling. It's like a very distinct feeling that I've felt it my entire life, but I've never been able to describe it. It's really bothered me that I can't like put my finger on it. You know, you have there are some feelings that are very like, they're very specific. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just some shovel-faced imbecile, and all you have is just like, I feel like that most people that I talk to, and I sort of envy them. I mean, I know so many simple people, and they're just happy as a fucking clam all the time. Nothing bothers them. Nothing irritates them. They don't have anxieties or anything. They're just kind of like, they're just kind of like standing there. You'll see them, and you see it written on their face because nothing is written on their face. They're just standing there kind of like, and if you bump into them, they'll be like, whoa. It's like they're not really there. And I kind of envy that. I kind of envy that simplicity. That, sort of like a completeness, that maybe they have. But anyway, I see that a lot because I feel like everywhere I go, every waking moment, I feel like I'm always just on the edge. I'm always just like, I've always got something on my mind. I'm either like super angry and pissed off. That's 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time I'm just like manic. 20% of the time I'm just like having a manic episode. I'm just totally cheerful. And then I see other people and they're just kind of like, people just say anything. I talk to people and they just talk and I'm like, they talk just for the sake of talking. They say things and I'm like, why did you say that? Like, why did you need, that doesn't mean anything,
The seed glide will increase your effective exploration range.
The older I get,
for your safety, please pack supplies for long journeys.
I gotta start
and stay
to
within
reverse
5 kilometers of the
I'm
nearest
coming up on my
life pod
8-year
or
anniversary.
habitat.
Tomorrow's the 8-year anniversary of the show, and it's like, damn, someone told me today, they're like, they're looking at a picture of me from when I was younger, and they're like, man, that's what 8 years of fighting the evil empire does to a nigga. It's like, that's so true. It's so true. So I have to find, this is the year of renewal. I have to find a way to renew the spirit of me and the show, because it's like 8 years of battle and inertia has brought me to this place where I feel like I'm kind of trapped in a certain sense. So I have to find this source of renewal, source of inspiration. I don't know where it's going to come from. I don't know where it's gonna come
Weapons
from.
were removed from standard survival blueprints following the massacre on Abraxas Prime. The knife
We'll see.
remains the only
Anyway.
exception.
Nice guy racism sent $100. Here's February's cut. Sorry for the retarded, off-topic chat before. I don't send them live. Congrats on being vindicated on everything in the face of constant ridicule and lies.
Thank you for the big super chat. I appreciate it. February's cut. It's okay. It's okay that you sent a retarded super chat. But I don't even remember what it was, so it's fine. But thank you very much.
Catholic Duva sent $5. Keith turning on them and giving me a like button is like a breaking bad. Gus starts getting Jesse on his side against Walt. Walter's like, I'm sorry. After everything you've done for me, you've killed me is what you've done.
Yeah, he is like Jesse from Breaking Bad, and I'm like Walt. It's very similar. Very similar dynamic.
Sheboygan Grow Ever sent $5. Doyle's Gaza Code, saying that the U.S. won't deploy troops or fund reconstruction, but will oversee the deal remotely to ensure stability in the Middle East, aligning with Trump's campaign promises and allowing the U.S. withdrawal from the Middle East.
I love the delicious cope, as if that's better, right? Well, we're not deploying troops to Gaza. We're just going to be guaranteeing Israel's security and bombing Iran.
Grow Ever 1 sent $5. Maybe we should Canada be the 51st state. We would double our weapons of the American superpower and we'd take all their businesses. It wouldn't even take 3 days to conquer Canada, plus we'd be liberating them from communism anyway.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Wayne Benedict sent $5 from St. Thomas Aquinas' commentary on Matthew 19 verses 3 to 12. But why does he, Jesus, forbid a man to marry her, and not forbid the woman to marry? I respond that women are more prone to
Very true. Love that.
School sent $5. Portrayal of North Korea is largely J propaganda because he's the only leader to not kiss the wall and doesn't recognize Israel as legitimate.
That's
Communism is
retarded.
treated like Hitler, the worst, because it completely kneecaps their power. Thoughts?
Totally retarded.
They love also sent $100. And it, it's some like advice. My mom keeps yelling at me telling me I need to read books, but I just don't know which books to read. If only I had some sort of 4-panel thinking tank.
This is Ozzy from the cafeteria. What the hell, guys? They didn't want us. This might happen. Our
Hey,
pod
thank
was
you for the
almost crushed
big
by the
super
Seamoth
chat.
Bay on
I
the way down.
appreciate it.
Now we're hanging on
Is
the
this
edge of the cave
LO stuff
system.
from
And this
Twitter?
grim-looking snake thing's trying to eat
I
through
don't
the
know.
hull.
What is the point of this super
Come
chat?
get us already.
We're
Signal
cramming too much in there. So you
uploaded to
got your
PDA.
4-panel. You're complaining about the hats because it's a 4-panel hat. You know what? And here's the problem. So we just got our sample from the new company. What do you think? Can you tell which one is which? I'm not really happy with the sample, if I'm being... Can you tell which one is the new sample and which one is the old one? Because I can. And I like the old one. What do you think? Which one's the new one? Which one? Wait, or I'm sorry. Which one do you think is the old one, the good one? Which one do you like better? The one on your left, the one on your right. Which one do you think is better? Which one is better? The one on your left, your right. Left, right. Obviously the left, right? Everyone's saying left. Yeah, see, this is the original one. Now look at the profile. I feel like this one is rounder. This one is more flat. This one is more blue. This one's more flat. The text is more bold. This one's bluer. It's deeper blue. The color's deeper. The letters look sharper, crisper, more compact, slightly smaller. So you know what? The company that makes these has been really jagging us off.
Survivor. You have exceeded your
They don't have
weekly
the right
exercise
fabric.
quotient by
They still can't do it in
500%.
time. They got all these
Data indicates
problems.
that swimming was your favorite
Well, this is the
activity.
company that they
Be
told
sure to
us
vary your
that could
routine
fulfill
for
the order in the
uniform muscle
meantime.
development.
So, you know, we literally just got this today. Well, here's a sample, and it's like, you know, it looks good, but it just doesn't look perfect. This looks perfect. This is a perfect hat. This is a beautiful fucking hat. And this looks completely different. This